Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Talking TV with my mum, the weekly Geek-Dom TV review Roundup podcast where we discuss geek/genre TV shows for your entertainment and we give our take on the various things. We do a sort of review and give our thoughts and our speculation and throw in a bit of news and also discuss some of your comments. This is the 22nd episode, which is pretty cool that we're building up those double-digit figures now, and we've got some ideas for things that we're going to be doing a bit further down the road. So keep your eyes and ears open for this podcast as to see where we go and what we do with it. Just the usual housekeeping to start with. So if you enjoy this podcast, then please show us. Please hit that thumbs up button and leave us a like so that we know you are enjoying it. And also, please leave your comments down below so that we can discuss them. And it's always great to get some feedback, get your take on things, if you've got any questions or anything relevant to do with the shows that we discuss, or even if it's shows in general. I mean, we've had recently, it's not a show we cover, but obviously Mum watches Supernatural, and a lot of you watch Supernatural, so we've had some conversation about that. So we're not opposed to other things that we might not cover, provided they stay within the realms of, fantasy television, really. And also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We would love to have you join us as part of this Geek-Dom, this kingdom of geeks that we're building. The numbers are going nicely and we're moving in the right direction, so we want to keep bringing in more and more people and spreading the word of the Geek-Dom across the internet. So if you can help out with that, that'd be fantastic. Also go into my description box for the timestamps for today's episode. And also there's the link for my Twitter, so you can come and follow and chat to me on there. And also my donation mediums, if you should feel generous enough to donate to the podcast and to the channel in general to help me to do bigger and better things in the future, that would be greatly appreciated. That's everything, so I'm going to introduce my co-host and say hello there, Geek Mom. Are you there?
Hello. Yes, I'm good. I'm here.
Hooray! How
All
are
ready
you?
and prepped. Yeah, I'm good.
Good,
Good,
excellent.
good. At least it's not going to be so exhausting this week because there's only one of each thing to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we've got one season finale, series finale because it's the last ever one, and then just a couple of other bits. So yeah, it shouldn't take us half as long this week. But the video's been doing all right. I mean, we haven't had a ton of comments, but it's had quite a lot of views. So even though it's like a lengthy podcast, it's still being still being absorbed. It's still being digested by people.
People are still enjoying it. I
yeah.
mean, like I say, as long as you're viewing it and you're enjoying it, that's the main thing. But if you feel confident and you want to make a comment, but there's no pressure.
Yes, exactly. So do you want to just get stuck straight into it?
Yeah, let's get cracking.
So we'll just quickly do the comments then. So we've got a comment from Will from 2-Bit Gaming. So Will has said that he watched/listened to the whole podcast from start to finish and loved it. Very informative as always. And he said, "Hey, Mum."
Hey, Will.
But he didn't watch any of the particular shows that we were discussing last week. So he asked us a question, and he said, out of the 3 shows that we covered, which is the best? And you must pick one, both of you, and why? So when I replied to him in the comments, I said, that's a really mean question. So we've basically got to choose between the things we discussed last week, which was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Legion, and Preacher, and we've got to pick one out of those 3 that we would regard as the best and what the reason is for that. So I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, that's really nice. That's a really hard pick. Obviously, they're all really awesome programs. I will say this. I mean, all of them I'd watch again.
Yeah.
But the one that really I watch and I go, wow, it's finished already, is Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's the storylines. Obviously, I love it into time travel anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And they've touched on that loads over the whole seasons. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about that. I just think I love both of them, like all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Comedy factor, Preacher, hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Legion, weird and wonderful. But yeah, I think even though I've not watched any of the films to do with the Marvel people, to do with connection to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
That has always been out of all of everything, even including all the other ones.
Yeah.
that has always been my favourite programme
Mm-hmm.
because the action, the fight scenes are amazing. The content, there's lots of humour, there's lots of real empathy and stories in it. And I've got Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah, always.
Wow. Okay, fair enough. Well, for me, I mean, it was really hard, and obviously I've had the benefit of having a little while to actually think about this since I read his comment. It was a tricky one because I thought, but I really like all of them. But then I thought
Yeah,
back
like I said.
to the other week when we were asked a question about watching these shows if you could only have one show and you had to watch it for the rest of eternity or whatever. And I think I'm going to stick by what I said with that one as well, which is Legion, because I feel Legion is so different to everything else we watch. It's got those common threads because it's, it's based off a comic book, it's fantastical, it's got weird special effects and strange things happen in it.
Brilliant songs.
Yeah, but it's always got a really good soundtrack. The story itself is very intriguing, and just like we said before when we talked about it a while back, the way they brought in real life, psychologists, psychoanalysts, doctors and things like that in order to get that balance between there is this guy, he's a mutant, he's got multiple personalities because they are different aspects of his powers, but then they also play it out as what's the word? I can't think of the right word for it, but like a study into psychosis, mental health issues, what it's like to be...
There's an important message in that programme, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, and they went and spoke to people that have issues with schizophrenia or multiple personality disorders and things like that to try and get these portrayals as accurate as possible. And there's so much incidental detail and really clever filmmaking techniques and cool ideas that it would stand up to repeat viewing over and over, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you know what I'm like, I've got like an elephant's memory. I can watch something and I can't go back and watch it again for a long time because I remember everything that happens from start to finish. It's like, I'm not one of these people. There's certain films that I can watch over and over again, like Nightmare Before Christmas and things like that, because they are just like my favourite film, and it doesn't matter the fact that I can recite them line for line and know every single thing that's going to happen. But generally, with films, I have to have a bit of a break before I can rewatch that film, even if I loved it, because otherwise I can't enjoy it in the same way because I know everything that's going to happen. It's like
Groundhog Day. You remember this seeing it recently. Can I bring a point up, actually, when you mentioned Legion?
Yeah.
There was something that happened last week that you said about eggs. Now, I almost butted in, which I did. I'm sorry I didn't. If you remember, back in the one of the other seasons, he said, it all begins with an egg. Remember the thing where the egg cracked? You know when we used to have that psychology guy used to talk over?
Yeah.
He would talk over the thing. That's what, when the eggs were in the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously rebirth, eggs, new life. Obviously coming into our last, when we do talk about it, relevant, isn't it?
It's interesting, like a little subtle thing that they put in there that they didn't make a big deal about.
Saying, why were these eggs in that room? You were saying, these eggs started hatching. I thought, I missed a boat there. I should have interacted then and thought, no, but that, if you think about when they said it before, and also I'll see in the final, it's like, that made so much sense.
But this is exactly my point in how it stands up to repeat viewing, because there are those kind of things that might be connective tissue to do with stuff that happened earlier, or them repeating a theme, or going, do you remember this thing that we talked about ages ago? Well, here's a little thing you might not notice because it's done in a really incidental way, but then you go, oh, that's really clever storytelling, because they're not even doing it in the way of like, we have to spell it out for you. It's like, if you've been paying attention, you will notice all these little nuanced details, and I like that.
We have to work it out every time, didn't we? We have to work out, what does this message mean? And obviously when that was thrown in the last season, you forgot about that.
Yeah.
Clearly, and like you say, you remember, you've got better memory than me. But then I remembered it, and I went, and I didn't mention it at the time, and I thought after, when I listened to the podcast back, going, that's where that relevance was from one of those other seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there we go. So Legion is my answer. So like I said, it was a hard one because I love the other two. It was hard
because I love all three of them.
Yeah. But
for different reasons, obviously.
And I did teeter. I was close to picking Preacher over Legion, but then I went, no, Legion, because it goes back to my earlier answer from a couple of podcasts back. And like I said, I could quite easily see myself rewatching that whole show
Oh,
over
defo.
again
I would
because
definitely watch it again.
and probably getting new stuff from it and like looking at it from a
Yeah.
different angle and going, oh, I never considered that this episode really it appeared to be about this, but really it was to do with this thing or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
It definitely challenges you to
Well,
think.
we found that, didn't we? Because obviously when we started at the beginning, the first episode, couple of episodes, we were going, what is this program about? We just go, our mind is just being blown.
Yeah.
But as we worked our way through it all, we went,
Yeah.
But like you say, that was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you could watch it again and get a different perspective on it, couldn't you?
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah.
So thank you very much, Will.
Angels of Shield for me and Legion for Dom.
Yeah, so thank you very much for that, Will. Appreciate that question. Definitely gave us some food for thought, and hopefully we've given you good answers there. So there we go. So then we'll move on to Skippy. So Skippy Skippy has left us a nice lengthy one again. And so firstly, he picks up on last week's and he says, to answer your question, Bernie. So he says, yes, Bernie, I do like Supernatural. Because you had said, do you like Supernatural? Do you watch it? And he said, but he did stop watching it after Sam went to hell, which in his opinion is when it should have ended.
Oh.
So he feels that they should have ended the series then after Sam went to hell.
Okay.
He also he forgot to put it in the comment. He sent me a Twitter message and he said, I forgot to say, when it comes to favourite character, he said his favourite character is their dad.
Oh, God, because he's out of Walking Dead.
Yeah, it's Negan, isn't it? Jeffrey Dean Morgan, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that's his favourite character.
That's a lame answer.
But he did apologise to you as well. He said, in terms of stopping watching it when he did, he said, I'm sorry to say that, Geek Mom. So hopefully you can forgive him for stopping the series before it finished.
Yes.
And then to me, he said that he does love Picard, and he can't wait for the Picard series to start. And he also agreed that he is by far the best captain, and nobody like Kirk, really, after they say Picard. I presume what he means there is that he's basically saying that, Picard is his pick, but then you couldn't say anyone else after him
Captain Kirk.
Captain Kirk. But if you had to pick somebody else, then you would have to.
Well, that's fair enough.
Picard,
if he says that, I'll have to look up Star Trek, the New Generation,
Next
or whatever
Generation.
it was now.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch it now because he's saying that if he was as good as my boy Kirk, I might be worth me having a look.
He's a brilliant captain, and he's such a great actor.
I like the actor. I love the actor.
Stewart's amazing.
But yeah. Well, maybe I'll. There you go. Might dip my toe in that one.
And he said he didn't have individual questions for us both this week, but he does have a question in relation to the shows and things. So now, I love the fact that he asked this question because it actually triggered in my mind something that I forgot to mention last week in relation to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and how it ended and stuff. So I'll start with his question and then I'll go on to say my thing. So he said, given they went back to the past in S.H.I.E.L.D., do you think that we'll see a Captain America cameo? Now, I apologise to anybody that hasn't seen Endgame yet, and if you haven't, there months and months have passed now, so the embargo on spoilers is long since gone. So I apologise, but spoilers. So Captain America ends up back in that era at a certain point, and it's like, well, if he's back in that era, will he show up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? It's a possibility. Given it's their final season, they might be given a little bit more creative freedom from the main Marvel division, and they've always said S.H.I.E.L.D. is connected, so it would be quite nice, I suppose, if they go and see Peggy Carter and they also bump into Captain America at the same time. They had Samuel L. Jackson on the show before, and he's I know that the actor that plays Captain America is a big actor now, Chris Evans, but he is not Samuel L. Jackson, and they got Samuel L. Jackson on the show, and that must have cost them all the money. So if they managed to get him on the show,
amazing. He's top man.
It's possible that they could get Chris Evans to appear on the show. So yeah, it's not outside the realms of possibility. But in relation to that, something I completely forgot. So in that time period where Peggy Carter is, there is also another character. That character is Howard Stark, who is the father of Tony Stark, who is Iron Man. Howard Stark is also involved in Agent Carter, and also with Captain America, and with the formation of S.H.I.E.L.D. And interestingly, I don't know if you remember from the Agent Carter TV show, Mum, but who played Howard Stark in that era?
Oh, I can't remember now.
Okay, that's fine. You can't remember. Okay, but because when I say it, you'll go, "Oh yeah, right." So basically, if I said to you, "Preacher," yeah. So Preacher is ended. It's ended. They finished filming this. The season we're currently watching is the final season, but they've already finished filming it. Okay. Dominic Cooper was Howard Stark.
Seriously?
Yes, Dominic Cooper.
I've got to rewatch that.
If you go back and watch, so the very first Captain America film that came out in what year was that now? 2001? No, not 2000. It's not that far back. 2000 and, oh God, I can't even remember the year that Captain America came out. Somebody will tell me in the comments. But when Captain America came out like 10 years ago, basically, or just under 10 years ago, and Dominic Cooper was in that. And Dominic Cooper was known, he was a known commodity at this point. He had done some other stuff, a lot of British TV. He'd been in the History Boys with James Corden, and various other things. So he was a known actor, but he wasn't like a mega star. So when he was in that, it might not have registered in the same way as if he were to go and be in Captain America now off the back of Preacher, because that's made him more of a household name. But yeah, he was Howard Stark,
like
and
Mamma Mia.
Also Mamma Mia. Yeah, of course he was in Mamma Mia as well. Which again, obviously, the original Mamma Mia, maybe people will remember he was in it, but they'll probably remember even more the fact that he was in the sequel. So because again, he's more famous now. But yeah, he was Howard Stark then, and he was also Howard Stark in Agent Carter. So now he's free from filming Preacher, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the final season isn't on until next year. It makes you wonder whether they could get him in to reprise that role, just as a cameo, just maybe in one episode, maybe even like just for a couple of scenes, But it's possible that he could show up.
I'm going to have to watch Agent Carter again now.
Just for him, just for Dominic Cooper. But yeah, so I thought about that.
Wow, that's interesting, yeah.
That crossed my mind last week when I was listening back to the podcast, and I was like, damn it, why didn't I think about that? And then I was like, I must try and find a way to shoehorn it into this week's podcast. And then Skippy asked his question, and I went, thank you, Skippy, because you've given me a back door into bringing up my own thing along with the thing that he asked. So I appreciate that, mate. Thank you.
Yeah. And Skippy, I'm going to look forward to your new thing you've got out there.
Oh, his the thing that he's currently doing is XCOM series. Yeah.
So I'm going to be watching that.
Yes, the XCOM series is very entertaining.
Yeah, that's going to be hilarious.
Yes, episode 1 is good, so I'm looking forward to the next, like what happens in the future of the series.
I'll be fine when my son goes to university now, because I have all these new YouTuber people I can watch their stuff. So I can't find something to watch on my tablet. I'll go on YouTube. I've got loads of things I can watch now. I'm subscribed to so many different people. So
yeah, when all the TV shows have ended, it's like, well, that's fine. I can now watch all these things on YouTube.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh dear. Well, that's pretty much it. So they're the two big comments this week that gave us like talking points and questions to answer and everything. So thank you very much for that, guys. And if you would be kind enough, people listening to this, and maybe go and check out their channels, both Who is Skippy and 2-Bit Gaming are both very good channels, and they're both worthy of your time and attention. So I'll put some links down in the description box so that you can just not have to go searching. You can just click on the links and it will redirect you. And they're both good supporters of us and our podcast and everything. So
yes,
yeah, give them some love. Right, okay, so now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes, as they say, of the podcast, and we are going to go into the return, after its very brief little break, of Fear the Walking Dead, and this episode was called Channel 4, not to be confused with the UK TV channel.
Oh yeah, this episode was crazy. So this episode was based on various interviews by Al and videos by everyone else.
Yeah.
Telling what their purpose was in the group and that their experiences, and also how they could help others.
It was weird. It was like a documentary, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like, a lot of people do that, don't they?
And they were like
I
showing
was
all the
getting a bit
different
confused for a
characters.
while.
Mm.
And they'd heard from lots of people since last, like the end of when they got the plane across. They'd heard from lots of people needing help, and basically they had managed to get hold. Apparently, basically they'd raided some place, got hold of a load of cameras and film. So Al decided, why not? We all
Yeah.
film some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the episode was based on them watching each other doing other things, basically.
Yeah. And I will
And one of
say, as far as I'm concerned, and I think you agree with me, it was so boring.
oh,
It
yes,
was
it was.
so monotonous because it just kept switching between character to character, and they were just talking. I mean, I think for people that are maybe getting reintroduced to the series, or like they maybe missed some of the last half or something, it was probably really useful to come back as the first episode after the mid-season finale. Maybe it was very useful for people as a jumping on point because it was bringing us up to speed, talking about, oh, we did this thing, and then when this thing happened, oh, and here's this character, and here's what their journey they've been on up to this point.
Yeah.
But for those of us that have been watching this series continually,
Mm.
I was just like, this is just filler. This
Yeah,
is just like, it's a
quite
recap
dull.
episode.
Yeah. So basically, one thing we did find out is obviously at the end of the last episode when they landed the plane,
Yeah.
Logan had turned up for help,
Mm-hmm.
and Sarah had turned around and said what they did.
Yeah.
Basically, they all buggered off, left him standing, chucked a box at him, and left
Yeah.
him. Said, "We're not interested in helping you."
Yep. They said, what did they
So there
say?
was
I think
basically,
the exact line was, karma's a bitch, Logie.
yeah, something like that. And there was like bits of Dwight was making a chess set out, which that was quite cool. He made a chess set, didn't he? Didn't he
Yeah.
make some chess
Yeah, and then he
pieces?
played it with Daniel,
They
didn't he?
showed how he had changed as a person.
Yeah.
He still refusing to have a haircut of Daniel.
And the reason being is because of his appearance. Because he's got a
Yeah,
scarred and burnt face, he was like, what difference is a haircut going to make? It's not going to make me prettier.
yeah,
You know, it's not going to make me
yeah,
better to look
exactly.
at, so I don't see the point. And Daniel was like kind of getting annoyed. Daniel was like grumpy with him because he wouldn't allow him to cut his hair. And then you had things
And
like
then
you
we
had
had
like
also,
training montages because you
well,
had the whole
Alicia.
thing with Alicia.
Well, yeah, because Alicia, because she's always been she'd gone crazy, hadn't she? All she wanted to do is kill, kill, kill.
Yeah.
Her weapon, nothing to do with her anymore. So Morgan was trying to teach her the sort of like the calming of the stick thing he does, and she just couldn't grasp it. But a side note, she is actually very good at it, but she had to make out she was rubbish. Talking Dead told me that bit.
Okay,
But they
right.
showed her doing that. So anyway, the main story was a lady called Tess and
Yeah.
her son had contacted them
Mm-hmm.
and were waiting for her husband to come back with some inhalers because the son had asthma.
Yeah.
So basically, away from all the camera bits. So basically, they'd made their way to the house, and then they realised that they couldn't get in to just go in and help her because her husband had laid landmines all over the garden
Yeah.
to for her safety. So any walkers or anyone basically he didn't think about the fact that it might be to normal people, did he?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, anyone that walks in the garden gets blown up.
Yeah.
So Morgan and the gang were going to try and help. We had a little funny bit where we had the thing was, is it Sarah, the truck driver?
Yeah.
And they had a secret place, something because she told them to turn the camera off. I don't know what that was all about. But when she's out and about, she contacts Windle and the Convoy song.
That was so funny. Yeah,
That was absolutely brilliant.
the trucker
That
song.
was, yeah, you got to sing the Convoy song, haven't you?
Yeah, what
And
was it?
apparently,
The convoy. That
yes,
was, yeah.
that whole song.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, on a side note, apparently, when she realised that scene when she was going to drive the truck, she ensured that was in there.
Oh, really?
She said, you can't drive a truck and not go on a CB and talk to somebody and not sing the song. So she made sure they put it in.
Yeah.
And we had bits about the gang saying, yeah, really annoying song. That's not even music. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so Morgan and that are going to try and help this woman. In the meantime, there's walkers around. I think it was Alicia. One came towards her. I think it was Morgan. Can't remember who killed him.
It was whatchamacallit, because she was wandering around and she saw the tree.
Trees.
And the tree had writing on again, which was clearly from Dwight's wife. And she was examining the tree, and then you got the cut to her again, talking documentary style to the camera about her mum. and about the things that her mum used to say about the world around us and things like that. Then you had her examining this tree, which said, if you're reading this, you're still here. Similar to what we saw in a previous episode with the ladder and stuff that John and Dwight saw. And she was looking at this, and then a walker crept up on her. And then luckily, Strand came out of nowhere and just like stabbed it in the head. So she didn't have to do anything. Yeah, she didn't have to react or do anything.
And they realised there was in the back. They checked there was a bag attached to this guy, and they found
Skipping back a moment, so you have this whole thing with this woman is holed up in the house, and it turns out she's in there with her son. There is a husband, and she doesn't want anywhere near because the husband is coming back soon because he's out looking for medicine for the son who appears to have asthma. That gives them the clue as to look for things. So they go off, and there's the bit obviously where
June went off to some medicine place.
Yeah, she finds that lots of the medicine has already gone. So it's like, well, they must have already been here because the stuff's already been cleared out. So they're like, right, okay. So then they carry on looking for this guy. In the meantime, back at this woman's farm, walkers are randomly like breaching the fences and getting blown up. That was really cool. And like the bit when they broke the fence down and loads of them walked through the fence and they were walking across the garden and they were just all bang, they were just all exploding. That was pretty disgusting as well because they all got showered with bits of bodies.
Bits of blood and guts.
So then this woman was adamant, it's fine, my husband's coming back, he's out there and all of this. And she kept talking about the husband, how he was there, he's coming back for her. Then you cut back to that scene with Alicia, and it turns out that this person, that this zombie, like you said, had a backpack, and it was clearly her husband because it had all the medicines and things in it, and all the inhalers and things like that. So it was quite sad.
We also had when they were doing the camera talk. Morgan was because he kept talking about this Tess woman, saying that was when he opened up about his wife and his son.
Yeah,
and that's why he felt he needed to get to the house to help her.
Because it gave him closure, didn't it?
Well, yeah. So anyway, they were getting blown up left, right, and centre, and he was like, he started walking towards the house.
Yeah.
And then he got to a certain point, and he stood on a mine.
Oh yeah, and then you had that really tense thing that we have seen in most of you have probably seen in numerous other TV shows and things, where it's like, if you don't take the pressure off, it'll be fine. You've just got to stand there, and then we've got to figure out a way that we can get you off it without triggering it, or replace your weight with something else to keep it weighted down or whatever. So then, pretty much, pretty much the rest of the episode was that, wasn't it?
There's a way of, Al tried to say there's a way of diffusing it, but in the end, the woman in the house,
she came out, didn't she?
Came out of the house and told him she had these pins or like screws or whatever.
Yeah.
If you put them in the holes, it'll stop it. Because he'd obviously left her with these. He said, like, basically, if ever she had them in her pocket, I suppose.
Yeah.
If ever she had to go outside, at least she knew how to block the mine so she could get off it. So yeah, basically that was close because he told them all to stand back. He said, well, I don't know, stand back. And they all sort of run away, and then he put the things in. But did he not get off and then it blew up anyway?
Yeah, what was funny was so that she gave him this pin, they very carefully put the pin in, and then you had this tense moment where he's like told everybody to stand back, and then he was like, right, psyched himself up, like, I'm going to step off this now and hopefully it's going to work. And he did, and then it was like, oh, what a relief it didn't explode. So then he stood there talking for a moment, and then he walks towards all the others, and as he walked towards them, then boom, it blew up behind him. Yeah. And it was like, oh my God.
Yeah. That's what he did, is he gave the little boy the inhaler, and he took a puff of it, and then he said something to him, and the little boy just walked away.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, they'll be all right. So basically he was saying, we got to camp. Yeah. He walked away, and then started walking away from the mine, and it bloody blew up anyway.
Yep.
It was like, whoa. So then they took them back to the camp.
Yes, because that was the other thing. So again, what annoyed me about this episode was the fact that when it ended, we thought, oh, the new big conflict is going to be, they're going off with this Logan guy, and he's got this crew, and they're going to look for this oil field and all of this kind of stuff. And then obviously we come back, and it's been a time skip, and they've found the oil field. They got all the oil. They've since gone on and found more trucks. The fact they've got a camp, because they abandoned the mill because they said they felt it would be more effective if they became like a travelling caravan, and they went and got people and brought them into this, and then they would carry on going on the road with them, and they would set up camp every so often and like make a ring of vehicles around them.
And then they'd take them back to certain places after they found these people. They would take them back to certain areas.
But instead of doing it where it was like, we're based at the mill, we'll go out, collect people and bring them back to the mill, they for some reason just decided to scrap all of that, and they're
Scrap all that
now,
and just go straight ahead.
yeah, they're now like a travelling circus. They're now going from place to place to place. So I was annoyed by all this because I was just like, why did they just? It seems like they just completely scrapped whatever they were planning on doing in the first half of the season, and now they've gone in a completely different direction. So that really baffled and annoyed me at the same time. So as you said, so that ties in with, like you said, they brought them back to the camp because they have a camp now.
Yeah. But then basically we realised that there was a point of this stupid video thing because they decided to make these videos.
Yeah.
And they've added on their box now that something like, there's obviously take what you need, leave what you don't. And then they've added on the list of, I don't know if you noticed, on the box, you can help too, or something like that. They've added another line on the boxes. And then basically they were taking these tapes and leaving them in different places with the box. So basically we found this out because we saw this young chap, basically we watched the video and then we realised somebody else had been watching this video.
Yeah, so the whole episode we'd been watching, we'd basically been watching it through his eyes. Like, so all those documentary
young chap was
things.
watching the video, and then next to the television there was a walkie saying Channel 4, which is where the episode came from.
Yeah.
And he takes what he needs, but then he realised there's something locked up, so he busts that open. Whether that was their plan as well, everybody got fuel, so that was locked away because obviously it's combustible, isn't it? So
well, no, I think that the fuel was locked away because it was powering the generator that made the electricity work so that the television would work,
they weren't supposed
so that people could watch the video. That's why it was locked up, because it's like,
so,
as long as there's power, anyone that stops by there will be able to watch the video. If there's no power, they can't watch the video, the message can't be spread. So that's why it was locked. So he did the bad thing.
Well, anyway, he basically opened it. He took the big thing of gas, and then he went outside and he had this badass motorbike.
With a sidecar.
All right. Yeah, so he had a bag, he had some of the food out of the box, had the phone, filled it up, and then he was interrupted by Logan and his crew.
Yeah.
Who took all his stuff.
Yep.
Destroyed his motorbike.
Very much destroyed it. I mean, they could have just shot the tyres.
Well, they basically thought he was part of them, but he probably thought they were part of them originally, didn't he? And he said, who are you on about? I don't know what you're on about.
Yeah.
And then when they realised he wasn't, they still weren't going to let him get away with it. So they took his fuel. They siphoned it back out of his motorbike, didn't they?
Yep.
Took the fuel, took his bag with any goodies he had, just shot the poor bike to nothing.
Yeah.
And then he said, and then there's walkers coming. He goes, looks like you're gonna need, to move soon. And he said, well, how am I supposed to do that? He said, and then he took the phone out of the bag, gave it back to him, and said, you need to call them.
Yeah.
And he said something like, let them know we've got bullets, plenty of bullets.
Yeah. He's basically using him to send a message to our heroes, kind of thing. He's sort of like, call them and let them know that I'm still out here and we've got plenty of bullets, and they're making more enemies out here than they're making friends.
Yeah, more enemies than friends. Yeah, that's it. And then just left it, and that was it.
And that was the end of that.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, apart from the end point of that episode, most of it was meh.
Nah.
What? This is how you come back? This is how you come back after your... I mean, I know the mid-season break was only a couple of weeks, so it wasn't like...
Annoying. It started off really well.
But...
The beginning of the season, it was like, we were saying to people that weren't watching it anymore, go, well, you got to watch it. It's so good. It's so good. It's like,
yeah. And now it's dipped a little bit, so I'm hoping that it picks up again from the next one.
Me too. Hope this week's one's going to be like, oh, that's better. Back to normal.
But there we go. So that's Fear the Walking Dead. So now... we move on to the finale episode, the finale of ever. Well, I have heard rumours since that they're saying, oh, there's possibilities that they could bring it back at some point, but for the time being, for all intents and purposes...
The guy said he wrote it it was supposed to only be 3 seasons.
Yeah, but I mean, there's since been talk...
previous things.
In the last couple of days, there's been talk that it could return for a 4th season, potentially. There's enough sort of meat on the bones for them to do it. But for the time being, the final Legion, chapter 27.
This is the end, the beginning.
Yes.
The end, what it all means is not for us to know. It is for history to decide. All we can do is play the parts that are written. All we can know is ourselves.
And that was the opening words and things that were coming up on the screen, wasn't it?
Yes.
I was hoping that you would write those down.
And baby David, Baby David's mobile spells Legion.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that.
So we basically saw the baby and then all the bits of David growing up as he, just him, little snippets of David growing up into the man.
Mm-hmm.
So then we had David and his dad in a room.
Yeah.
And David was pulling something out of his ear. And it was
Yeah.
hilarious. Pulled out, it was like a goldfish.
Yeah, that was weird.
It
He
looked
pulled
like-
a fish out of his ear. That was really strange.
It's like looking really cool, like pulling something out of his ear. And he looked at it, went, fish, dropped it. Then he had another go. And he pulled up something and it was glowing. And it turned, what were they called, those things with the spikes on? Is it nunchucks? No, nunchucks.
No. Oh, God.
Scythe.
My brain is going dead at the moment. It's like what you saw Medieval Knights, and it's a stick with a chain, and it's got a ball on it, and the ball is covered in spike.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I can't
basically,
remember
he
the
pulls
life
that
of me
out
what
of
it's
his
called at
ear,
the moment.
and then he goes to his dad, it's your turn.
Yeah.
So he's pulled out a bullet out of his ear, special bullet to put in his gun.
Yeah.
Which is the only bullet. And it was all, they were all like glowing, weren't they? They were all really glowing. And we had a little bit of, in the background, Switch was laying down. She was so sick. And all she was doing was talking to her dad. It's like, oh, all that stuff she's done, there she is. So they see the other Farouk, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, come on then.
Okay, so they've got their weapons ready to fight.
They walk into the room with their weapons.
And you've got
when
the
they
two
walk
Farouk.
in, we have old Farouk and King Farouk.
Yeah. And they look like, they're like, oh, hello, and they're sort of trying to talk to them, and it's like the time for talking is over. And they get into it, like they get into a fight. And David uses his, whatever that thing's called, and he's behind the old, like the version of Farouk from that timeline.
We call him King, and the other one's Farouk, yeah?
And he bashes him over the head, and he just disappears. And then I was like, wait, has he killed him? But obviously it turns out not quite. But it's almost like the things they use. See, this is my take on this now, and I don't know if you agree with me here, but what I think happened here, this is me trying to interpret it. So they created these weapons in the astral planes. They were like psychic weapons. They were then able to use those psychic weapons in the real world. And the psychic weapons were not designed to kill the two versions of Farouk. They were designed to transport them onto the astral plane. Yeah, because that was exactly also what happened with the older Farouk tried to reason with Charles and tried to say about having a conversation, and midway through talking, Charles just pulled the gun out and shot him.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, he didn't hang about. But then we get to see that both versions of Farouk, with one with David and one with Charles, have been indeed taken to the astral plane to continue the battle there as opposed to in the physical world.
Yeah. So do we want to talk about that, or do we want to interact with what happened with Sid in between, or do you want to carry on with that?
Yeah, let's carry on with that, because the whole Sid storyline kind of leads
so basically
into the ending.
David took King Farouk, and Legion were there.
Yes, and they were all coming out of the doors and all approaching him, and he did a
good
good job to begin with.
Kept getting rid of them, but then they cornered him, didn't they?
Yeah, because he was he was wiping them all out and shooting them off, wasn't he? But they kept coming, and to the point where they just swarmed him, and they were just all on beating him down into the ground, and there was tons and tons of them just piling on top of him, and they just overpowered him, didn't they?
Yeah. So then we saw Charles in his astral plane with the other Farouk.
Yes.
And Farouk was like, oh, because he'd been shot, and he started pulling a red hanky out where the bullet should have been.
Yeah.
And he got up and he looked at, and then Charles had a knife in his hand, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he went, no, we don't need to do that. And he changed the knife for a beer.
That's right. And he said there are much more, what did he say? There are much more sophisticated ways of dealing with this. We don't have to resort to violence. And Charles looked really confused, but aren't you the villain? Why are you being so pleasant and not wanting to fight me? He was really taken aback by present day Farouk's demeanor, I suppose.
Yeah. So then we went to David again, and we see him in a straitjacket.
Yeah, because the old Farouk, King Farouk, as much as he'd been overpowered, obviously he's very powerful himself. He did an explosion thing, didn't he? And sent all the Davids flying off him, all the legions, and destroying them all or knocking them back. And then he was able to then actually get the real David out of all of them. And then, like you
And he
said,
was
he trapped
horrible.
him.
He was horrible. He was saying things like, "No one ever loved you. Your mother never loved." He was saying horrible things,
Your
wasn't he, about his
father
parents? No,
abandoned you. Your
your
mother
father
couldn't
abandoned
cope
you, and
with
your mother never
you. And
loved you, and all this
yeah.
horrible stuff. And then we had the song.
Yes, and then we had the Pink Floyd song that
Mother.
came in.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
and it was
so good.
and it was between him and his mum, wasn't it? It was like he got
Yeah, he
connected
was singing,
somehow,
then she was singing,
and
and
it
it
was
was
like
like,
a
oh my
really
God.
trippy music video
Oh, it's brilliant.
because they were singing
That's
it.
definitely a visual. You gotta watch that.
Mm,
It's so clever because basically with the singing and the mum, it was the use of the song. He felt loved. He
yeah.
felt strong,
Mhm.
and he expelled the straitjacket off himself. And it turned out that it was like Farouk that was strangling it, like grabbing him.
Yeah.
Because when he expelled the straitjacket, it was Farouk on the floor, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then he tried to kill him. Oh, he was like so wanted to kill him.
It was just, again, when we talk about the stylistic stuff in this program and like what they do, like that section, like I said, it wasn't just here's music playing in the background. You know, where
No,
you
they
see
were
a
singing
lot
it,
of
weren't they?
TV shows where they use proper music, but they have it's the actual artist, it's playing in the background over a scene that's happening. This was like a music video, and the two actors that play
Oh, I could
David and
listen
his
to that over
mother
and over again, that
were
bit.
actually singing it, weren't they? And it was so
Mm,
melancholy. Like when he's like,
mm.
he's talking to his mother, and like, you know, when he's like, "Mother, do you think they'll drop the bomb?" I'm not going to sing it because we don't want to get copyright striked.
Yeah.
But you know, like, "Mother, do you think they'll like the song?" And all this, and it's like he's asking these
Oh,
questions to his
awesome.
mother, and then she then comes
Then
in
she'd
and
come
she's
back in
like
and respond, wouldn't
making
she?
him feel better and like, "Hush now, baby, don't you cry." You know,
That's my favourite
mother's
song of all
here and
time
all this
now. I
stuff.
love
And
that song. I've got to download it onto my phone.
it was just so good. And like you said, it then made him feel loved. It made him feel wanted. It made him realize, you know, these
It
things happen
strengthened
to
him, didn't it?
me.
'Cause he needed that. He needed to think that somebody did care about him.
Yeah.
And
And
that
then
was it. That was what he was trying to do. He was using mind games to hold him there. And then he started saying, like, calling out to his mother, basically,
hmm
because she was responding in his head.
and it
He
powered
just
him
like,
up
no.
so that he could escape.
Yeah. And then he just grabbed him, didn't he, around the neck?
Yeah.
Like,
Started strangling him. So then we go back to Charles and present day Farouk, who are sat at a table drinking their
having a beer.
beers. And just having well, I say they're having a jolly nice conversation. I mean, Charles is just sat there listening, baffled by what Farouk's saying. But
But
Farouk
this was interesting.
yeah, because he basically was there, said he'd come back to help David, not to help the past version of himself.
He had realised because we know that from the episode where he told him where the girl was,
Yeah.
that he was changing his attitude towards it all, and he actually wanted to help. He'd not come back to like cause trouble.
Because he had
wanted to
come
help.
to a realization, and he said, the version of me now is very different to that. But he said, I forgot how arrogant I was and how, you know, the ideas I had were so different. And he said, but living with your son, living inside your son's head for 20 whatever years, he said, I now see him, he became almost like my son too.
Yeah, he said, I love him like he's my son.
Yeah, and I've seen him grow, and I've seen the
And he
pain
said, we
and the
need to
torment.
solve this. And then the dad said, okay.
What do we do?
Was it the dad said I have a proposition, or was it Farouk
No,
had a
Farouk
proposition?
did. Farouk had a proposition.
Yeah. So we need to now go back, because we can't continue this until we talk about the other bits.
Yes.
Because we'll end the story. So anyway, we went back, because obviously Sid had gone to David's house when he was a baby.
Yeah.
And obviously we knew the time eaters were there. There was lots of little, it was breaking up again, like before we had when they were repeating themselves.
Yeah.
So the Carries decided, the girl and the boy Carrie decided they had to merge together to confuse the time eaters, because there was two different people.
Yes, because they had two different time signatures, because although they can become one person, they are also two distinct personalities. So it would give them the edge in fighting the time demons, because they would almost have extra time between time in order to actually be able to fight these things.
So they decided to merge, and as they merged, David's mum said, I was right, you are gods.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
She sort of watched this thing happening, but they went and kicked some butt, didn't they? They went off, they went. Then we've had Switch. She woke up, and everything was breaking. She could see everything was being eaten in the time thing.
Yeah.
And then we saw all her teeth fall out.
Yeah, she spat, didn't she? And
time
like all her teeth
yeah,
were in her hand.
The time eaters were there, right in front of her, and she went, "I surrender."
And she lay back thinking they'd come to kill her because they were getting closer and closer and closer.
Yeah. And then we went back. Obviously, the carers were battling, but they were struggling because one of them was injured, obviously.
Not just that, but also because she was getting older. Because although...
And she started getting older, yeah.
Yeah, because although they had that edge by having the dual times of two personalities, they were still being affected by the time demons, and they were taking away her life, her time. So her hair was going grey, she was getting older, and like at one point, didn't she stop for a second, like when she had a breather, and she was like, "I'll be fine, it's just arthritis or rheumatoid kicking in or something," and she was like, "But it'll be fine, I'll push through it."
Kicking in, yeah.
Because
so anyway, we had Switch woke up, and her dad came to get her. He said all the stuff about like she basically she'd done everything she needed to do. The baby teeth were part of her.
He said, "Oh, I see that you've lost your baby teeth."
Yeah. So basically, he said she'd been reborn because obviously she was like looked fine, didn't she?
Because she thought she was dying, and we thought she was dying, and I think she still thought she was dying when the father showed up. Like it was that thing, you know, where you see your loved ones when you're at your last moments. But it turned out it was almost like she was evolving from one form to the next, and the whole teeth falling out thing was not a bad thing because
part of it. He said you have your wisdom teeth now.
Yeah, and she checked, and she
they
had
are
a full
now
set
part
of teeth
of
again.
time.
And she has actually become like a time being. She's no longer a human.
Time, basically.
Yeah, she's no longer a human.
He said we need to go, and she goes, "No, I have one more thing to do before I go."
Oh, the other important thing, he also told her that they have the power to control the time demons, and he said, "Watch," and he went, "Stop, sit, do this, now go," and all this, and they responded to his instructions. So he was able to then actually, because he said they are the tributaries of time. They are here to protect stuff, but they are also here to do our bidding.
Yeah.
Which was very important.
So then we saw Charles rushing to where David was, stopping him from killing the King Farouk.
Yeah.
And he said to him, "I want to make it right. I want to be your dad. I want to do the things I should do." Because we don't know what the proposition was, did we, at that time? So we don't know what the plan was.
And it was really sad. David started crying, and he said, "You're my son. Let me be your father."
Baby.
Yeah. And he hugged him.
He said, "Yes, and I need to make it right." So then we saw the two Farouks, didn't we?
Yes.
And he said our Farouk, the older Farouk, said he gave King Farouk his glasses. Remember, he used to wear the sunglasses all the time.
Well, yeah, because he first said to him, he says to him about this proposition, and again, we don't hear the proposition. It's the tail end of the conversation, and the King Farouk he's like, "You have become soft in your old age. You have become weak." He's like, "I do not accept any bargain," and all this lot. And he was like, "You disgust me that I become you. Look at you," and all this lot. And then our present day Farouk goes, "I think I will have something that will change your mind, my friend, because I once thought like you did, but now I have the benefit of showing you what I didn't know." And then, like you said, he pulls out the sunglasses and puts them on him. And then we saw all 3 seasons of Legion play out over the course of about 5 minutes or something.
From the Shadow King, all the stuff that happened to David.
When he got tried to kill
everything
himself.
From number 1. Yeah. And obviously our Farouk had obviously, maybe the second time in the Wastelands had woken him up to the fact that said, "I am not a nice person. You need to see this because you don't want to be this person.
Yeah.
I am you in the future. You need to see this."
Yeah.
And then when he took the glasses off, the other King Farouk was crying, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he said, "I understand what you're trying to show me, and I understand what we must do." And he was like, "Thank you for showing me this."
Then we went back to the Time Eater battle where Sid was.
Yeah.
It was still going, and they were like fighting the hell out of everything. And then Switch appeared, blew a whistle.
Yep, and they all
basically
jumped
told them
in
all
line,
to leave.
and then told them all to leave. Yeah.
And then she gave a big hug to Sid.
Yep.
And said that their past will be changed. And she goes, "Oh, I'm going to die now." He said, "Yeah, but you will be a better version of yourself." And all this stuff. And they had this hug.
David and stuff, didn't she? And she said, "Did he succeed?
Did he do it?
Did he do it?"
Did she say no? Did she say something like you did it or something? I can't remember what she said. She said something to her.
Can't
But
remember,
anyway,
but she basically explained that, like, their actions, both hers in that timeline and both what David was doing, would create a new reality, a new world,
yeah,
and
yeah.
there
The
would be new versions of
past would
them.
change to be new or
Yeah,
something.
so it would be like they wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't be the same people that they are now.
No.
So they would effectively
That,
die.
yeah. So then we had two different bits. Near the end, we had, oh my God, this was a big eye opener for me.
Mm.
We turned out we had Carrie on the floor, and she went over to see about the new look because she obviously looked really old, didn't she? And she said something to her. And then he was in the room, the man Carrie.
Yeah.
And then we found out they were twins.
And it showed like he was looking at her, and then you saw this image of a young him looking at her sat on the floor on Christmas morning playing with
On
the
the train
train
set or
set.
something, wasn't it?
And then
So somehow they were connected forever.
Yeah.
Something must have happened to one or other of them. And she said, old man, and he goes...
You can't really say that now.
Oh, can you? And she goes, brother.
No, he said, old man, and then he said, you can't really say that now. And she said, I guess not, because now she's older and with grey hair. And then, didn't she say, like, well, what should I call you? And he said, how about brother? And then she said yes, and then they hugged. They put their heads
that was
together.
awesome.
And
I
like,
love that because obviously one of them had died. Because he looked like he was in bed sick, didn't it?
Mm.
In that bit where he was in bed, little boy with glasses, and she was on the floor. It's like maybe he died, but they never would. They couldn't separate.
No, I don't think. What my take on it is that, yeah, he was sick, and they were probably twins, like, separately, but then, because they were both mutants, they merged in order for him to live.
Survive.
And so then,
Yeah.
in order for him to live, they had to, apart from small moments in time where they could separate into two people, the majority of the time they had to live as one person
Together.
combined.
Yeah.
And it was that moment of like they're finally able to be because that was also the thing, was that she never really aged. She was always so much younger than him.
Yeah, she was like a teenager, and he was like a 50-something.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
and that now it's like now we're both the age that we're supposed to be because we are twins.
Yeah.
And
but that was one of my favourite moments out of everything.
Yeah, it was quite emotional, wasn't it?
I really thought, oh, that's so awesome. That was lovely.
Yeah.
And then we saw David's mum in the conservatory or whatever it was, a little bit, and the dad came home and asked her how things were.
Yeah.
And did she say, he said, where's David? And he said, oh, he's upstairs, he has friends. He has friends.
And then she said about all the crazy things that she's seen. And then he said, you talk about the crazy things you've seen. And then he said, I met a king that was inside of a monkey. And he said, also, I joined forces with our son from the future and all of this kind of stuff. And he was like, so time demons is just a walk in the park in comparison.
And then he went, may I kiss you? Like in the old days, they used to have permission to give you a kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yes. And I thought, oh, that's sweet.
And then they put in the connective tissue to the X-Men, because at that point then he said he wasn't going away, he wasn't leaving again, he was going to stay in the mansion, and he said he had always fancied being a teacher. And you go, so that's how he becomes Professor X. That's how he becomes the leader of this school for gifted children.
See, now I need to watch all this stuff as well now.
So it's like they connected it all up to the X-Men, which was a nice little moment there. For me, because obviously
I've only ever watched things like that on cartoon, never watched the films and the stuff. See, this is now mind opening, isn't it? To watch all these things. Because to me, then I would have went, oh, I know what you're on about now. But I didn't know that. I used to like X-Men on the telly.
When we used to sit, all of us, when we were all kids, and we used to sit eating our breakfast watching it on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember, you see. So when you started, like the other week, you was going, I'm really annoyed they haven't done the connection. I was going, what are you on about?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't watch those things. Maybe I'll have to get clued up now. So yeah, then we saw Sid with a baby, look at a little baby David, and then David appeared.
That's right. And he apologised to her for everything, didn't he? And she forgave him. And she said she understood, and she said about all that had happened, and then she said about them having a good life. and hoping that, they can both be happy and that they'll flourish in their new existence.
And he said something about, you helped me. She goes, no, I didn't. I helped this David, the baby, not him. And then he said about meeting up again. I think she said something like, no, don't think so.
And then didn't they like their hands kind of move towards each other? And then as they did, they just faded.
He disappeared.
Away.
He disappeared first.
Yeah.
And then she disappeared.
And then it ended how it all began. So the very last scene was the very beginning scene of the whole of this program in episode 1, where we saw the baby, and then we had the Who, Happy Jack playing, and that's how it ended.
Yeah.
And it was like it ended how it began. So it was circular, but now this beginning, this ending, which is also the beginning, is a new beginning. It's a different timeline. It's a different David. It's a different set of adventures. It's a different future. But it was just a nice little touch, having that last moment be the opening moment of the very first episode of season 1, with the same song and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's how cool it was as well. They had Pink Floyd and The Who both in the same episode.
Yeah, that was really good. But they've always picked really good music, haven't they? They've always used good background music, and that's one thing obviously I liked, obviously, because all my sort of guys are in the background playing music. But yeah, I mean, yeah, like you say, they could open it up to like, now we see what happened to him now as new beginning. But I don't know. I'm old school. If a story's good, leave it.
Yeah.
Leave it.
Right, okay, so now we turn our attention to something we haven't talked about for a couple of weeks, but we're going to get back into our continued reviewing and recapping of Stranger Things Season 3. So we're now up to the 4th episode, which was Chapter 4, The Sauna Test.
Yeah.
So one of the first things, this was just a brief thing, this was picking up on the last episode where we saw Billy and the lifeguard girl, Heather, with her parents, and they took them out, they drugged the mum, they hit the dad over the head with a bottle, and they dragged their bodies off and stuff. Well, they took them to the mill, and they were tied up, and they came to, and they were gagged and everything, and they were like screaming, and Billy's sort of like, oh, it's going to be fine, and Heather's there like going, oh, hey daddy, it'll be okay, sort of thing, acting really weird and creepy. And they're like, it's all going to be over soon, you're going to be part of something greater or something like that. And they take the gags off their mouths and they start screaming. They're like, hey, there's no point doing that, it'll all be over soon. And then they go up the stairs, didn't they? They like walked up the stairs, and then the camera pans across, and then you hear the growling and gurgling and stuff of the monster that's growing in the basement that sort of just comes towards them, and then that's that. And then they sort of scream, and then it's like cuts away from there.
Well, yeah, because obviously at the beginning we had Elle remembering all that, didn't she? Mm-hmm. And she's really confused.
Yeah.
Max was going, oh, it's fine, we're fine, and try to like distract her with Wonder Woman comics.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We also had, obviously, Nancy and Jonathan got fired. That was another little thing that happened because of their looking into this case to do with that woman and the rats and everything. They were called in and the boss had to go at them and stuff like that. And that was funny because, again, obviously the boss is the dad of Heather.
Heather from the swimming pool, yeah.
And did he have something like a plaster on him or something like that?
Yeah, he looked a bit battered and he was sweating a lot.
And he shouted at them and told them that they were unprofessional and what they'd done was wrong and that's not their job. And especially with Nancy, that's not what she's supposed to. If there's a story, she needs to pass it over to somebody else. And they're trying to protest and stuff. And then he says about that they're going to potentially get in trouble because it turns out this woman is a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. So he's like, you went in there with this woman, this poor woman, and you listened to her ranting and raving, but, this woman has got mental health problems and stuff. Did you know about that? No, you didn't, because you didn't do your research. You just went in there thinking there was a story, and you didn't think about the consequences, and now, the paper could be sued for harassment and all of this kind of thing. And then he basically fired them. He said, that's it, you're done, you're fired. So Jonathan was very upset about that because he's like, I was trying to keep my head down and do my job. Nancy was like outraged. So that was that for the time being.
We also had Joyce and Hopper back at the house after he got beaten up at the lab.
Yes.
talking about what happened, and luckily Joyce had got a partial registration on the baddie's motorbike, didn't she?
And she said about a motor, because he said, "But did you see the car?" or so? And she said it wasn't a car. He was on a motorbike, and he's like, "Oh." And then he had a recollection, and he remembered the day that he went to see the mayor, and he saw a man in motorbike leathers coming out of the mayor's office.
Yeah.
So he was like, we have a lead.
We have a lead on that. So we also had Mike, because obviously what Will had told them, he was sending a code red, and Max was ignoring him.
Yeah.
And in the end, she answered the phone, and he updated her on what Will had told her.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get hold of Dustin, who's still staking out the warehouse.
That's right, yeah.
And Robin has an idea and takes off with the tip money from the ice cream parlour. She goes, I have an idea, and she just takes all the money and runs off.
Yeah.
It's like, oh. So Will is updating everyone on what's been happening.
And he says about the feeling, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, about the mind flayer, as he calls him. And they're confused as they go, well, the gate's closed.
They then worked it out, didn't they? Because they were like, they remembered about what had happened, about when it got like expelled from Will's body.
Yeah, they said maybe it was locked out. And because remember we saw him spooking up a wormy thing afterwards.
Yeah.
Was that the thing that's actually been growing underground?
Well, they said that some of it, like when the gate was closed, some of it obviously was here that didn't get sucked back through, and that's why it had never fully, all of it had not fully gone back to the Upside Down, so it had been here ever since then the events of the previous season.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously then Hopper and Joyce went to the mayor's office because of that, and were trying to find out who the crazy soldier was, and he was beating up the mayor.
Yeah, because to begin with, he was just trying to talk to him, wasn't he? And the mayor was being very, like in a lot of these things, especially in that era in the 80s, he's a real sleazy, slimy sort of character, and he's sort of evading him and trying to tell Hopper that, to remember his place and this, that, and the other. And then Hopper eventually just lost his temper and was just like, right, if you're not going to tell me civilly, then I'll just have to beat the answers out of you.
And he said it was something, and then the mayor finally sort of went, oh, well, something to do with land, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah, they've been purchasing up the abandoned properties across Hawkins.
Yeah.
And it's all connected to, like, the development of the mall and all these empty properties, and that he basically doesn't ask any questions because they're, like, scary characters, but he's like, these are people you don't want to mess with and that kind of thing. And Hopper's like, rrr. And then he later he contacted them, didn't he?
No, well, obviously what happened after that is they went back to the mayor's house, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they found all the information, and he gave them all the paperwork.
And they found plans and things.
And they handcuffed him, but his wife got back and saved him. He goes, give me a phone. Obviously, that's when he told the Russians.
Yeah, exactly.
So then we had Robin. Robin got back to the mall after taking all the money, and she goes, I got the blueprints of the whole place. And they sussed it out that there was an air vent they can use.
Yeah.
So Dustin goes, well, I can get in there. That was hilarious.
Oh, yeah, because he got his head in. And then he was like going, push my butt. And Steve's like, I'm not touching your butt. And he's like, just do it. And all this.
And he was just too big, and he got in, and he went, that's not a good idea. And then Robin went, I have an idea. Because you could hear Erica going, hello, can I have free ice cream? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. She goes like, this is going to be hilarious. So the other gang, which was obviously Luke.
Yeah, Lucas,
what's it called? The black guy, yeah, and Will, and Max and Elle, they decided they were going to stalk out Billy because she told them their bit of it. So they were watching Billy at the pool, and Mike had a plan to trap him in the sauna.
Yes, because they said one of the things they remembered was about how the Mind Flayer and creatures from the Upside Down don't like heat. That's why when we saw Billy in the other episode when he was out in the sun and his skin was burning and he was feeling and he had to go and get in the shower and get cold because they don't like heat, because obviously the Upside Down is a very cold place. So they're like, this is what we're going to do, and then if we trap him in the sauna and then if we turn the heat up, then we can determine whether or not he's actually been like taken over or anything, because it will draw it out. The heat will make it like discomfort and it will draw out whatever's inside him.
Well, to see if he's the host, because he said, obviously, then he'll react when he.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, back at the mall, Robin had obviously asked Erica to help them, and her terms to help ice cream.
Yeah.
And
Unlimited
she
ice
goes, you
cream.
can't spell America without Erica.
Yeah, because they were on about her driving a hard bargain. Because they were sat at a table and they had all these different ice creams that they were getting her to eat, and she was like, eat, and they were like, "You're not going to eat all that." And she was like, "You want to bet?" And she's like, "Yes, I am." And then she said, "These are my terms." And then she laid out her terms, and it was all very for a little girl. She's very business savvy and very drives a hard bargain.
Yeah.
And they were like, you know, you're really good, aren't you?" And she was like, "Well, you know, it's the society." Didn't she say something about capitalism and the society we live
Yeah,
in?
capitalism, yeah.
And she said, "You can't spell America without Erica," you know, and all this lot. And it's like, oh my God,
She wanted
she's
free ice
great.
cream for life, wasn't she? That was one
Hmm.
of her deals. So that was hilarious.
And it was, what was it, Operation in Child Endangerment or something?
Child endangerment was
She
her.
kept saying
Yeah,
that.
that was the thing. So yeah, so they basically got hold of her.
Hmm.
So also we had, yeah, so they got the plan together at the spa.
Hmm.
Mike told Elle what Hopper said,
Yeah.
but it didn't make a difference to her. Basically, it's like we're species, we're this, and she was still like she weren't letting up on what she'd heard him say because she doesn't understand it, does she? Because
No.
obviously she's not used to it all. It's like, okay, whatever.
Hmm.
So anyway, Hopper and Joyce, after being to the mayor's, they got all the plans for all the properties that this guy had taken over, and she was working out a plan, going, oh, they're all around there. So they worked their way through all the properties, didn't they?
But then that sort of continues into the next episode, so we won't talk any more about that yet because they
Worked their way through the properties.
started
So
working
anyway,
their way through them, yeah.
yeah. So Erica's in, she's going to do it. So they decide, let's move it. So oh my days, that girl.
So she gets all like geared up, doesn't she? And she's got like a helmet with a light on and
She's
all this
like the
lot.
things on her wrist, her elbows and everything. So like she
Mhm.
has to scoot her through the thing. So she's like, right, operation started. Meanwhile, at the swimming pool, the other guys put their plan into action and trap Billy in the sauna. And poor old
Yes.
Matt's going, not be you, please not be you. And he's confessing. He was confessing to what's happened, didn't he?
Mhm. Yeah, because they did. It was really clever because they had like they set up like traps and things, and then they were like doing like spooky stuff. Like they were banging on stuff, and he was going, "Whoever's in here, I'm gonna get you, you little shits," and all this lot. And they're going, "Billy, Billy," and all this lot. And he's following the noises, and then eventually, obviously, he went to the sauna. They locked the door. He went raging. And then they were trying to get the information, and as you say, as time went by, he started breaking down a bit because they were turning the heat up and turning the heat up. And then
What happened?
he was then crying out.
Will could feel the monster, couldn't he?
Yeah, but then he was
Because he was
crying
getting
out to
angry.
his sister, wasn't he? And
Yeah,
he
he
was
kept
like
saying,
going, "Why are
yeah,
they doing
sorry,
this?
Max,
Tell them,
yeah.
get me out of here, Max," and all this lot. And he's like, "They're hurting me." And she was like, starting, you're going, "Oh no, Max, don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. That's not your brother." And then didn't she go up to the glass? And then when she did, that's when he like went rah, and he like came up, and he was all like raging, and his eyes were all funny, and he had like veins bulging in his head, and
Yeah, he smashed through the glass in the end, didn't he? He broke out. And then he had
yeah.
a massive fight with Elle. That was cool, though.
And she
It was
just
scary.
about managed to fight him off because he was so strong, and like no matter like she was doing stuff to him, but he was still fighting back, and you're like, oh my God, she's struggling here. She's really struggling to hold her own against him. And eventually she managed to sort of like, didn't she get, what did she get, a fire extinguisher, and it like smacked him in the head, and then she slammed him up against the wall or something, and he was bleeding, but then he escaped, and he got out of there, and she was like exhausted, and they were all gathered around her like, "Are you okay?" And she was like, "Oh, oh," and you're like, "Oh, this isn't good," because that was really tough for her to deal with him. How the hell is she going to deal with whatever else is growing in the basement of the mill?
Well, then he got up, didn't he? And so she grabbed him in the end and she smashed him through the wall.
Yeah, but he escaped.
He ended up on the outside and he ran away, didn't he?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. And then she collapsed, and she was like, she couldn't, she was like exhausted, and you're like, oh, that's not good.
Well, anyway, meanwhile in the air vent, there was Erica going along, and she got in, didn't she? She said, "I'm in," and she let them in.
Yeah.
And then in the boxes that the Chinese writing on, there were some weird containers with green goo in it.
Yeah, like a weird.
What's this stuff?
It was strange. It was,
The way Steve was going, stand back, all stand back, and then, Dustin goes, we lived together, we died together, or something stupid like that. So he stood by him and he pulled this thing out. So like, okay, and then all of a sudden, the room whatever they were in, started
shaking.
moving.
Yeah, and it turns out
quickly.
they were in an elevator. It wasn't just a room.
Yeah.
The room was actually
like,
a lift.
Whoa, they're moving. It's like, no.
Because that's something I think we slightly glossed over a little bit. The other thing, the thing that they did with Erica, when she got through the air vent, she got in the room, told them what she saw. They were watching from the rooftop. That was the thing I got confused with.
She let them in the main door.
Yeah, last time I got confused because when I was talking about them on the rooftop, I almost went into that bit, and then I was like, wait, no, that happened in a different episode. But she opened the door to allow them in, so that was part of the whole purpose of her in the first place, was to be able to open it from the inside to allow them in.
Get into the place they needed to, let them in, and then obviously that's where they found the stuff.
And then that was the end of that. So they went down. Now, intercutting with the stuff that was going on with Billy, at the same time, while this was all happening, Nancy obviously that she was picking up on this whole thing about this.
Got to see Doris,
lady.
didn't she, in the hospital?
Yeah, and the fact she'd been hospitalised, so she went to visit her, pretending she was her granddaughter or something. And when she went to see her, she was very weird, and she was all like,
she was getting really stressed, wasn't she? And that was at the same time Billy was in the sauna.
Yeah.
They was all interacting with each other. Basically, she was reacting to the demon, whatever the thing is that's took over them all.
Because she was feeling the heat as
her
well.
Her stats were going through the roof, weren't they?
And she was saying, I need to get back. I need to go back.
Yeah.
And it's like, go back where? Yeah. So, and then she was going all veiny and everything like that, because she was clearly, even though she wasn't in the same place, because they're linked, she was feeling the heat.
Affecting her as well, yeah.
Yeah, so the heat that he was having from the sauna, it was also affecting her, and she was screaming in pain and saying, I need to go back. Why won't you just let me go back? And I was like, oh, okay. So that was all of that.
That's what happened there. But obviously, when he got away from Elle and the gang, he ran and he met up with Heather, and he said that he told her that Elle knows about him.
Yeah.
And then the room was filled with people.
Yeah, it sort of panned out, didn't it? And there was
all the people the monster had possessed. It's like they were all there.
Loads of them. And then you saw the creature like in the background, like becoming more solid. And you're like, oh man, this is not good. They're like, this creature's getting bigger. It's becoming more real. And they've got an army.
Well, there was quite a few familiar faces. There was like people like from the town and the precinct, weren't there?
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of people it's taken over, isn't it, at the moment? That are people they see it on a daily basis, basically.
Yeah.
Like, ooh.
So, yeah.
Then left us on that.
Very exciting.
As I say.
So there we go. So that's Stranger Things. So we'll pick up on that and continue talking about that next week. So now we move on to our final point of discussion. And this is the third episode of Preacher, Season 4. And yeah, I need to clarify something from last week's podcast. So in last week's podcast, at the beginning of the discussion of Preacher, I encouraged everybody that hasn't seen this to go back and watch the previous 2 seasons. Then later on, I then also made reference to the fact that there were 3 previous seasons. So just to clarify, yes, there are indeed 3 previous seasons. This is season 4. I don't know why I got confused at the beginning and said 2 seasons, but no, there are 3
Maybe because it was episode 2 that when you were talking about the second bit, I don't know.
Maybe.
No.
But yeah, that was a mistake on my part, so I just wanted to address that.
I didn't pick up on that either, so I should have told you off as well.
But yeah, so this was the 3rd episode, and this one was called Deviant.
This was hilarious, because I was worried that when you watch this, like I do, sometimes when I watch it on various places that let me watch it, you get like stupid adverts popped in, and you go, oh, really? Okay, there's an advert, and the program's going to start. But this opened with an advert that was connected with Preacher.
It really confused me because it was very similar to... There's an advert, and I think it's for perfume
I recognised the guy in it. I can't remember what he's out of, but I recognised him.
For me, the advert reminded me of that. I don't know, I think it's for a perfume, and I think it's got... What's her name? And it's that one where she's walking along, and as she's like she walks along, she starts taking her clothes off, and then she goes and
the one
gets in
which
a
gets in the
bath.
pool.
Yeah.
Like Dior or something
Something
like
like that, and it was very similar to that. I was like, this is very, very similar. And then it showed
that.
for this
So
new face
basically, the
cream.
advert was for a rejuvenating cream. So there's
Yeah.
this lovely girl, and a man comes up to her and he says she's amazing. How do you look amazing? And she went, I never tell. And then they panned out to what the advert was, whatever it was called.
Toscani's
Now
face cream.
now with more foreskin.
Oh God, yes. And then the most horrible thing in the world
And
happened.
it went, aging that doesn't have to be torture. And as soon as they said torture, then it went straight into Cassidy being tortured for his
And
foreskins.
he was in somewhere called Bensonhurst.
Bensonhurst.
And you're like, wait a second, wait, he's in a new place. This isn't where we left him. And he was hooked up in front of a meat slicing machine.
It was like a conveyor belt type of thing, wasn't it? It was like that was happening. They were taking it away, shipping it off in crates.
It was disgusting. It
Oh,
was
it was
really
awful.
gross, and it made me feel very.
So that
I
was
was
to
sat
make the
there
new product. So
with my legs
all
crossed.
you ladies and men out there, make sure you read the foreign labels normally on an Avon one. To fair, you never know, there might be added foreskin.
Yeah, it was really horrible.
It was gross.
It was really horrible.
So then, obviously, we saw all that. Then we went to the Saint of Killers, and Eugene.
Yes, and they're having a good old walk
along the street.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, bless him, because he can't understand what he's saying because of his mouth.
Yeah.
And he kept saying things like, how's it going? Really? We still got to walk? And he was just ignoring everything he said to him, basically.
Yeah, poor old Eugene.
Texas, weren't they?
And what makes me laugh about this is that he's so bright and optimistic and puts a positive spin on everything. And he's like trying to ask him all these questions and like, what are you going to do when you find Preacher Custer and, you know, all of this sort of stuff. And then he's like, do you ever need to go potty? Do you eat? Do all this lot?
No, we didn't ask him that first of all. He said he was on about eating, didn't he? Well, he kept saying about this can't be God's plan. And he's going, yeah, it's all God's plan. He said, no, I don't think it's God's plan. He was so, like, naive and innocent.
Yeah.
Just walking down the street. Well, we may as well lump it all together, basically.
Yeah.
And then he said do you ever get hungry? Oh, I'm really hungry. So then Saint, even though he didn't speak to him, he, like, went, okay, let's go to a diner.
Yeah.
And then he asked for all this food, and he was going, and mine is blended.
Yeah.
And he's like,
the woman looked disgusted, didn't she, looking
like,
at him.
And then the Saint, he said, what do you want? He said, I want a whiskey. And she goes, oh, no, this is a family establishment. We don't have drinking, blah, blah, blah. And then Eugene suggested, turtle pie is really good.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell is turtle pie? Don't tell me it's a pie that's got turtle in it. So any of our American friends, if turtle pie is indeed a thing that's on the menu in your diners, what is it? Please tell me it doesn't contain actual turtle.
I really want to know. And then he said to him, so he'll have that. And then he had a chat to him, and he kept saying about what you're going to do to Jesse.
Yeah.
What was your beef with Jesse?
And he was on about violence.
He was trying to find out. Pardon?
He was on about violence, and he said, I don't like violence. And he said, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to kill him. And then he said, is there not another way? And he said, what do you suggest? And he said, an apology? He said, what about an apology? And the Saint of Killers was just like, like,
sort of like committed to anything, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And didn't he say something? I don't think an apology would cut it or something.
That's right.
I can't remember what he said.
Well, no, he then went on. This is what confused me, because he said about like an apology for what he did for me, because he said they shared the similar thing about like he sent them both to hell, and then he said, you know, he killed my family, ruined my life, and all this stuff. But then I was like, but Jesse didn't do that.
He didn't do that.
So I was confused by this because I
was definitely confused then. I thought, no, Jesse didn't do that. That Jesse wasn't even involved in any of that.
Yeah. So I didn't understand that bit. I was like, is he getting him?
He's thinking God, isn't he? He's a preacher. So basically, the higher being is involved. So it's all lumped in the same thing. Maybe that's what he meant by it.
Yeah.
But then he went, do you ever need to go potty? Do you need to go potty? I need to go potty.
So off he went to the toilet. Now, there's an important thing here as well. I don't even know if you noticed it, but while they were sat at the table talking, there was a man sat at the diner counter that kept looking back at them. And he was like looking over his shoulder at them. And I was like, what? I said to Zoe, I was like, that guy, why is that guy watching them? And I thought, normally in these TV shows, things like that are normally there for a reason.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is this guy watching them? And so anyway, Eugene goes off to the toilet. And he sat there doing his business, just about to finish wiping his bum. And then somebody starts kicking his foot. And he's like, you okay there, friend? And the guy's like, I can't understand what you're saying. And he's like, you need some toilet paper?
Toilet paper.
And he's like, I don't know what you're saying, man. He's like, just put your mouth to the hole. And then he reveals a hole in the wall. And he's like, oh, you want me to shove it through there? And then he's like, just stop talking. He's like, just put your mouth to the hole. And he's like, and he finishes wiping his bum and he goes up and he looks through and he's like, wow, that's really cool. And then he gets closer and, yeah. The guy, first of all, the guy says, hey, buddy, don't be so forward, because obviously Eugene's mouth looks like a butthole.
Looks like an anus, yeah.
And he says, hey, and then he gets like, rah, and
Have you never heard of foreplay?
Yeah, and then there's all this commotion, and then it's like, sex police! It's the sex police! Stay where you are! And then the door gets kicked open, and Eugene sat there, and he's like, oh, and there's a guy, and it's the same guy that was sat at the bar, at the diner, and he claims to be the sex police. Now, the thing is, we never get absolute confirmation of this, but I feel that the man that was in the cubicle next to him was actually the same man that kicks the door in. So it's like
I reckon he was the guy driving the car when they took him away. Because when they went out, there was two of them.
Oh, so you think the guy that was in the cubicle was the one driving the car?
Yeah, because they went outside. The guy with the hat said, "Take him back to the orphanage."
The orphanage, yeah.
And then there was different guy driving the car, which I think was the guy that was trying to.
Well, he was trying to entrap him, wasn't it? It was entrapment.
Entrap him, yeah. So he's like shouting "Saint, the Saint," and the Saint is sitting there like oblivious, and all he could go, "Help, Saint!"
Yeah.
Saint, and then the Saint just got bored waiting for him.
This is the thing. I don't think he did. My take on this was that he knew everything that was happening, and he was just waiting.
The way they made it look like, it's like, okay, he's not here. I'm going to go carry on my trip, and he just went outside. And then the guy moaned about the fact that Eugene's face was in the
mirror.
Rear mirror. He said, "Can you move? You're really distracting me."
Yeah.
And then he moved to the right. He went to the right.
Yeah.
And the next thing, Saint just went bang.
Yeah. You just heard the sound of clearly a whistling bullet. And then within a matter of seconds, there was just a breaking glass of the bullet going through, and then splat, and this guy's head exploded like a watermelon all over the front of the car, and then the car just drifted to the standstill.
He saved him. They got a car out of it anyway.
And then the next thing you see them sat in the car, and Eugene's on the bloody side, and the Saint's driving, and he's like still trying to talk to, and he's like going, "Dear God, please look after that man's soul." And then he's like, "Dear God,
that's so sweet.
please forgive this man for killing that other man," and all of this lot.
So cute.
And he's like saying all these prayers and like, "Please help us, God," and all this lot. And the Saint's just like grizzled and all like, and then Eugene starts trying to clean the blood off with his thumb from the windscreen. Oh my God.
Another thing that happened is, you referred to it last week, that something happened at that house, the Jesus de Sade, or whatever it's called.
Jesus de Sade, yeah.
Basically, when they turned up to sort of get the lighter, and then they showed it, didn't they, what happened from last week, what really happened.
Now, this was brilliant, because to start with, I was really disturbed by all this, because I was like, I don't know if I want to see this. I don't know if I want to see what they're going to uncover.
What was going to happen when he went in the house.
But we have this thing. So Jesse goes to the door and he knocks and it opens and he gets smoke blown in his face. And there's all people dressed up in bondage gear and weird costumes. And there's furries. Those of you that know what furries are. So there are furries and there are all sorts of weird and wonderful people in various states of undress or odd costumes. And he's walking around. And then did you notice that everything was going a bit wibbly? Like, the screen was going a bit wobbly. And I was like, that's odd. Why is it doing that? And then this man comes down the stairs, this very regal man. And it's the man that we'd seen at the window. And he was dressed in his pants, but with almost like a king's robe on, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And he was a very weird looking, pale, creepy looking man.
Pale face, blonde hair.
And he said he looked at him and went, "Oh, I like the outfit." And he's like, "Oh, you've come as a preacher." And he's like, "Oh, very kinky." And Jesse's just kind of looked at him with disgust. And he's like, "I saw a child in the window." And then he's like, "Oh, yes, yes, he's fully booked up for the entire week." And then Jesse's just like, "Get out of my way." And he just like knocks the guy aside and just storms up the stairs.
Didn't he punch him?
Oh, yes, he did. That's right. Yeah, he punched
Broke
him
his nose.
square in the face. And then he went up
Yeah.
the stairs and he's searching through all these rooms. And meanwhile, it's still going very wibbly wobbly. And you're
Yeah.
like, I then started thinking, I turned to Zoe and I said, I think there was something in that smoke that got blown in
Yeah,
his
because
face.
he got blown smoke in his face as he walked through the door, didn't he?
And so then he goes to he's checking all the and you can hear all these sounds of people having sex and God knows what else is going on. And then he gets to the last door and he opens it and there's a man painting this little boy dressed as a sailor or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, I've still got the best part of an hour yet. I'm not finished." And he's like, "You are now." And the guy stands up and Jesse just clocks him one, knocks him across the room, and then he goes over to the little kid. And it's the same little kid, obviously, that we saw
From the road
with the dog and everything. And he's like, "I'm here to take you out of here." And then the kid was like, he didn't want to go.
No, he said, "No, it's all right. I get loads of money for this."
Yeah, and he's like, "This is not the place you want to be." And and he's like, "No, I want to stay. I don't need to go." And then all the people started coming up to try and
Up the stairs,
get
yeah.
involved in this, all the weird masked people. And obviously this is, one of the reasons why this episode's called Deviant is because they were deviants and there were people with, kabuki masks and
so
bunny
came
costumes.
out and the way they portrayed it, though, the way they did it visually.
Yeah, and this
the
is
fight.
the thing that was really cool, was that, like, Zoe
so
said
amazing.
that this particular moment was her highlight of the whole episode, because she said she loved the cinematography and the way it was like different genres of film. So like the way, like, there was that bit where, I'll try and explain this for the people listening, but like the camera kind of zoomed out and you saw it was almost like they'd cut the side of the building off and you could see 3 rooms all next to each other. And the fight was
like
spilling.
It was on a balcony, like a one stretch of the building, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Just you could see as that. Oh, it's brilliant.
And it was like, it was almost like an old-fashioned film, like a.
Yeah, it looked like
And it was like, like a Hitchcock movie or something almost. The way it was filmed with the color palette and everything, and you had music for that bit, and it was all really stylistic. And then from there, it skipped into a different thing, and then it eventually ended up. It was like Kill Bill. It was like a spaghetti western kind of Mexican American sort of type of music, like in a western, and he was fighting and killing all these people and beating them up with like dildos and anything he could get his hands on.
Everything that was available, he was killing them.
And he was just going through just legions of people, wasn't he? Just fighting them all. And it was just so. The cinematography was just
it looked
awesome.
like they got him, and then next thing is like, rah!
Well, he used the power, didn't he? He used the Genesis power to like blast them all off him. And
then after the fight, he decided to check on the boy, and then went in the room, and the boy had obviously somehow got shot.
Well, yeah, he looked at the door, didn't he? And the door had a hole in it, and the camera kind of went. It was very cool. Again, cinematography. It zoomed in on this and this hole, and then it went through the hole as he opened the door, and then you saw the little boy, and bullet had like gone through him and killed him.
And then he started walking out, and then that stupid weirdo was there again.
You broke my nose!
My nose! Yeah, and then he killed him, didn't he?
Yeah, because he said, "What kind of creature are you?" And he's like, "How dare you? Look what you've done." And Jesse just saw red. And he
killed him. And then the pilot was there, just in his pants, going, "No, he's the one that said, 'What kind of creature are you?'"
Oh, that's right, he did, yeah. But yeah, he stomped the guy's head into mush.
I know, he just like couldn't help himself. Just like,
it was disgusting.
He really lost it, didn't he?
And then he sort of.
So yeah, so the preacher, the pilot turned around and said, "What kind of preacher are you?"
Yeah.
What? So meanwhile, Julia last week had got away into the Masada via pretending to be one of the agents.
Mm-hmm.
So she was in the hospital, waiting to be discharged, basically.
And they were running tests on her.
They wanted to do a psych eval on her. So she was like, he kept touching her, "No, sit down." She goes, "I can go, I'm all right to go, I'm going to go home now." And he got pushed. And she's like, "Do not touch me again."
That's the second time you've put your hand on my shoulder.
It all kicked off, and that fight scene on that one was cool as well.
And she grabs like bedpans, and She's like hitting them with
she was
everything,
kicking
and
ass and leg drops and all sorts.
but you knew
And
that it
then
was going to go wrong. And again, what I
unfortunately,
love,
the nurse got her and
yeah,
went, like,
she
you don't put your hand on me.
she injected her
You
with something.
collapsed on the bed.
What was really cool as well was the fact again that it had music in this sequence, and when she
Oh, yeah.
got injected with whatever knocked her out, the music sort of went
Yeah.
and like ground to a halt. It was really cool.
But then we saw poor old Cass with the angel,
Yes.
reflecting on why all of this was happening to him. He's giving up. He's like saying, well, it's my fault.
Mm.
Everything's my fault. You know, I deserve all this. I deserve it all.
And the angel's like, why didn't you go when you had the chance? And he's like, well, where would I go? I don't have anywhere to go. I have nowhere to belong. And then the angel tries to make him feel better by quoting Hoosiers, and he does. And it's really cool because obviously they used the clip from the actual film, and he speaks in the voice of Gene Hackman and does this bit of a speech to try and rouse Cass from his
Because I could feel a
misery.
backstory coming on.
Yeah, I love that bit when he was like, I feel a
that was so
backstory
sad
coming
because
on.
obviously he told the tale. He left the house.
So we get his backstory, and this is the first time we've actually seen the backstory of Cassidy. It's 1916 in Ireland during the time of the Easter Rising. So this is where the IRA, not as most people would know them in the modern era, but the actual the Irish Republican Army, which was kind of like in England you would have like Dad's army, like the Home Reserve, like they were not conscripted men. They were not in like the official army, but they were like a land army, and that's what the IRA were originally. And it was during the Easter Rising, and it was during the big like bloodshed that happened in Dublin and stuff like that. And you get to meet what his name is, Pontius.
Punchy.
Yeah, Pontius Cassidy. And do you know what I loved about this bit? You were in this episode. You were in
Granny
this
B
scene.
was
Granny
there.
B. I love that, but I was like, I laughed and I said to Zoe, "Oh, my mum."
He's mentioned Granny B before, hasn't
Yeah, and he's saying goodbye to his family, and they're all like, "Your tea will be here waiting for you, and you be careful out there." And then he's like, Granny B, I'll see you soon. And I was like, Granny B. I was like, that's so funny. That was brilliant.
Anyone that doesn't know that, Geek Mom is Granny B to her grandchildren.
Yeah, so that's
so
irrelevant.
I was in that episode.
So I love that bit, and then he goes outside, and there's a young fella comes up, and he's like, "Are you ready?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready."
It's Billy.
And then I loved again all of the little things that reminded me of like Granny and obviously our Irish heritage.
Our heritage.
And they were like, well, you'll have to box the ears of those what did they call them? Those Lord Muck Brits and all of this kind of stuff. Box their ears in and call them Lord Muck and all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, I love this. This is fantastic.
It was great. I loved it.
And they headed off, him and his young friend, Billy, to fight the good fight and try and push back the English that were invading and try and reclaim Ireland for the Irish. And so they go off to fight, and it didn't go well.
They were in like some sort of not like I can't say not a corridor. It was like a
alleyway,
space, and an alleyway. That's what it was. And then he goes, right, you ready? And they're all like, yeah, we're going for it. And then somehow young Billy got shot.
Yeah.
And Cassidy hid, didn't he?
Yeah, and then
he panicked. He went, and he just hid and he watched everything. It was like,
no, it wasn't. He didn't get shot. It was wasn't it a grenade or something? Because it blew his leg off.
But it was he got attacked anyway, somewhere.
And then
along
Cassidy
the way,
hid.
he got attacked.
And then this really made my blood boil. Knowing especially thinking of Granny and like her thoughts about these things.
They kicked the shit out of him.
They came these English soldiers and this poor lad on the ground, and they were just mocking him and saying about these Irish scum and paddies and all of this lot. And then they beat him up, and then they stabbed him with the sword bits on the bayonets on their rifles, and just left this poor.
And he was looking towards Cassidy, wasn't he? But Cassidy was hiding.
Yeah.
So Cassidy could see him looking at him, which made it worse for Cassidy, because he could see him look like he's probably thinking, looking at him, going, "Yeah, you stay there."
Yeah.
But Cassidy seeing it like that is like, "I'm a coward. I should have gone out and saved him." His friend was probably going, "No, you hide. Stay safe."
And then he ran off.
In his eyes, it's like, I've turned my back on my friend.
Yeah.
And then what happened then? He was wandering everywhere, wasn't he?
Yeah, he ran off, and then he was wandering around, and then there were some soldiers, so he hid, and it was like a bog. There was like a boggy area, and he got stuck in the bog, and then he managed to move forward a bit, and it was all wetland, and then something got him. Something came up and dragged him underwater, and there was a lot of fighting and a lot of commotion, and he got up, and it pulled him back down again. This thing was ravenous, screaming and growling, and he was trying to get away, and then there was something happened under the water, and then he got bitten, but then he must have done, I don't know what he did, but he did something to kill this thing, and that's clearly the moment where he got bitten and became a vampire.
Yeah.
Because then
that was so sad.
It was really sad, and he went back to his family home.
Then he went back to the house, didn't he? And he stood outside, and he could see Granny B looking out the window for him.
And they were all waiting for him to come home, but he knew.
And then he told the angel he couldn't tell them what had happened.
He needed them to believe he was dead.
How he turned his back on his friend, and what happened, and what had happened to him now. And the angel, this crazy angel hanging up, farted, and a feather down to him.
Yeah.
And this feather sort of petered down, and then I know we went on to something else, but let's carry on with what we're doing.
Well, before we do, the other thing quickly, before we get into the further bit, the other thing that set that scene really nicely, both at the beginning of the flashback and then when we came out of the flashback, was the fact that they were singing The Leaving of Liverpool. And it was really like, oh.
Because they started singing together, didn't they?
And then
he goes, don't worry. He goes, don't worry, because he was on about this place he was going. He goes, don't worry, there's plenty of Irish in Brooklyn.
And it was so funny because he was putting on, because it sounds to me, does it sound to you like this angel is actually Australian? When he was talking, he sounded a bit Aussie, and then he did an Irish, and he was like, there's plenty of Irish in Brooklyn, you'll be all right, and all this stuff. But it was the way he said Irish. And
Cassie's face sort of like lit up, like,
And he was like saying about, you're going to be taken there, but the feather, and then it was like, what's the deal with the feather?
All we saw was the feather drop. They were singing, but they didn't see the feather again then, till later on. So then obviously they were singing and just like rejuvenating Ireland and all that. It was lovely.
Yeah.
So then we went back to Star's woman, and she'd gone to the hotel and realises that Tulip had infiltrated their gang.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh no, now I know, blah blah blah. But
yeah, because he's there. He's having a conversation with this young chap who's giving him a report, and they basically were framing Jesse because he was saying, "Oh, make sure you put all this stuff in there for the news people, and tell them he was a bloodthirsty preacher. He went on the rampage and put it out to all the news outlets. We need to get this out there in the world." And then he's saying, "Do you think I'm attractive?" And
that's so funny.
And the young guy's like, "No."
Yeah,
Hoover 2.
Saying, if you think am I attractive, and he says no, and he went okay, and it's like something about beauty, and it's like okay, that's no, ugly is not beautiful.
And then that's when
she interrupted, didn't she? And she said, "I know a tulip. Tulip's in the facility."
Yeah, because he said, "Have you found the Christ child?" And she went,
"Yeah, have you found the Christ child?"
No, but Tulip O'Hare.
O'Hare's in the facility, and then he was going on about her being hysterical, and the guy who goes, "Who's this?" And here's this
Hoover 2,
my new assistant, Hoover 2, and it's like, yes, she's very hysterical. So she buggered off. Meanwhile, Tulip was getting analysed for a psych evaluation. And the guy, if you answer the questions, the pictures and all this stuff.
Yeah, because it was one of those, I can't remember what they're called, but it's where they show them the pictures of
They always look like
ink
the
blot
Inns
tests.
or something.
It's like ink, is it an ink blot test or something like that it's called?
I would just go, that is somebody's womb. That's a womb.
Yeah, that looks like a pelvis.
You know how they see anything else?
That looks like a brain. That's a butterfly.
Seriously, yeah, exactly. They don't look like, they always say other things. I think if anyone showed me that, I'd go, no, that's not. That's that. And when I laughed when he was showing him that, I went, oh, here we go. That's the normal thing to show him. But anyway, so she'd convinced him. He said, you're a psychopath and you're this. Basically said she's all the things she is.
Yeah, he pegged her perfectly.
She's fine otherwise. So by the time the woman got there, she'd actually got discharged.
Yeah, and he was like, well, I discharged her. And she's like, you realise that she's a borderline psychopath? And he's like, I know, but I couldn't keep her here. And she's like, oh, so you idiot, what have you done? And then she's like, what about the vampire?
She obviously went searching. Meanwhile, Tulip had gone to find the Cass, and he'd already gone to that place. What was it called?
Bensonhurst.
He'd already gone. So then we saw him being looking like Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, they were wheeling him down the corridor.
But at the back, he had his hands obviously tied, and he had the feather.
Yeah.
There was blood on the feather. So I thought, oh, that's good. That's got to be good.
So it's
that
like,
guy, the angel guy,
what does it
that
mean?
was obviously relevant, wasn't it? The feather. So it's like,
Just to finish off the thing with Cassidy, from what we saw at the beginning and all of that kind of stuff. So he's now been shipped over. He's been given over fully by Hushtar to
that mafia guy, Frankie.
The torturer Frankie, who said he would be better used for him to take him to his place of operation in America
to make the product,
to make these products, rather than him like continually trying to escape and this, that, and the other. And he was like, let me put him to use and give him over to me. So he's now been put over. What was it they said, his forever home? Yeah. So that's the idea, is that he will forever be held there now and used.
They just keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
En masse, because now it's manufactured.
Mm-hmm.
And then
did the angel told Tulip that as well, that's where they've taken him.
Yeah. So then we had, obviously, when Jesse left the house.
Yeah.
I told the pilot to forget what he saw, because he went, I can't drive, I'm in my pants. He goes, you're not in your pants. Or I can't remember. He said he did the Genesis thing.
Yeah, yeah.
As they drove away to the airport, God was watching from the window in his dog Dalmatian outfit.
Let's just quickly.
And now said last week about the fact that he's got this thing on in his camper van, controlling everything.
Yeah.
So he's still watching him, isn't he?
Yeah, because quickly, just to say, those of you that aren't aware, when they were looking for God previously and they went to New Orleans, they found a fetish club, and there was a man wearing a Dalmatian suit who was being dragged around by a chain, and all of a sudden it was all really freaky.
And the guy told him that was God, didn't he?
Yeah, and then it seemed like
that guy, they got to help him, and he said that is God.
Yeah.
They were no, this is some.
It seemed like it wasn't, and then it was, and then it wasn't, and in the end, it turned out it was. God was on Earth, dressed up in a Dalmatian outfit, hanging out in sex clubs, because you're not going to think to look for somebody like God in a place like that. So I suppose it's a good place to hide, really, if you don't want anyone to find you. So that's why we see him again in this Dalmatian costume at this house of pleasure, or house of entertainment, as it was classed. So yeah, that was very interesting that he's looking out the window, and he'd been there the whole time. So yeah.
Yeah, so that was interesting. So then Jesse got to the airport, and he was smoking a fag, and this woman said, "There's no smoke," and he goes, "I can smoke." "Yes, you can smoke if you want, sir."
Yeah.
And then Hitler was there.
Yes, and you just heard the voice to begin with, didn't you? Saying about like using the power, and you could have used it. What did he say? Something like to give us some cashew nuts or something like that. I can't remember. Like, saying about how it was a real misuse of his power, and it pans out, and obviously it's Hitler sat on the seats the opposite side of him, like back to back. And he explained.
Before he's now, I'm in charge of hell, by the way.
and he's in town for a conference. This is my speculation on this. I don't know what you...
What's this conference?
Whether you thought anything about this at all. I don't know if you had any thoughts about this. But my thought on this was, he's in town for a conference. Who else is in that same town? Hushtar, the Grail, and God. So do you think that he's there for a conference with them because of the fact that they have realised that they need to pool their resources in order to stop Jesse?
Yeah, maybe.
That's where I think it's going. I think we'll find in the next episode, maybe, that Hitler is there to go to Masada because he's been summoned to meet with them, because they're like, the Jesse Genesis problem is bigger than heaven or hell, and you need to put your differences aside and work together in order to stop him. That's where I think that's going. That's my theory.
Yeah. Well, he was saying to him about the fact he was in hell and he's now in charge, and you've just abused this Genesis thing, and then he went, "Get on your knees," and then put your hands around your throat, and he was like making him kill himself.
He's getting him to choke himself, wasn't he?
And then he just said like stop or something, didn't he? Or no, I think the plane, the pilot was beeping the plane, going beep beep.
Yeah.
And like, "You're ready to go." And he just let him go, and he's like just walked away. I have to go. My plane's. I'm waiting for my plane.
And then Hitler's like, "I'll see you very soon."
Yeah, very soon. Like,
Oh, did you like
So just
the little comment he made as well when he was talking to Hitler, and he said about all the stuff he's doing and all the changes he's making, and Jesse said your parents must be so proud of you, and he said,
yeah,
oh,
so proud of
they
you.
are.
Yeah.
When I'm not doling out sadistic punishment to them, they're very proud of me. Oh my god. So yeah, so he
So
goes
anyway,
and
he
gets
got
on
on
the
the plane,
plane.
didn't he?
Yeah.
So he's sitting there having his fag and his drink, blah blah. And then the entertainment thing came on the news, basically saying that he is now a wanted man. Jesse.
And they referred to him as evil incarnate.
Yeah.
Because they said that he'd went mad, he had slaughtered all these people, and that, you know, he was crazy, and that basically the world authorities, like it was a worldwide manhunt now looking for him. So it's like, oh no.
Then it went off again, didn't it? And then the plane started buffing around, and the pilot said, I'm sorry, we're hitting a bit of turbulence.
No, he didn't say turbulence. He said, we're hitting a bit of something.
Oh, he said a bit of something, didn't he? He
and
said
you're
a
like,
bit of something.
What's something?
And then he heard Tulip behind him going, you at least could have said goodbye. And then we went, like noise like a plane's going to crash.
Yeah, and that was basically how it ended, wasn't it?
It's like, whoa.
I will say I was a little disappointed with this because I was hoping that we were going to get a cut of God again, and that God was going to have the model of the plane in his hand, and he was like tilting it.
Smashing the plane to bits.
Yeah. So maybe we'll get that in the next episode, but that's what I thought.
Well, yeah, because obviously, like you wanted something last week that happened this week, so that'll probably happen next week.
Yeah.
Probably at the beginning, we'll have God going, God damn it!
Yeah.
And chucking the plane on the floor or something. And they go, oh.
Yeah.
So good, though.
Very good, very disturbing, very gross, very moving in parts. You know, I found that whole section of Cassidy.
All the cast stuff is like, oh.
Yeah, and it makes you...
We never knew, really, did we? We never knew how he ended up like he did.
Yeah.
It was nice, obviously, because it is the final season as well. The fact they got a little bit of something about him, because we knew a little bit about Tulip, and obviously know about him. And it's just like, yeah, we finally found out why he is the way he is.
And I mean, it really...
And that's probably why he's so caring as well at times.
Yeah, it really added...
Because he had that upbringing, didn't he? He had the upbringing to be a good person.
Yes. It really added layers to his character because, you know, you followed him all the way through, and to see all of this heartache, and you go, now I understand why he's this self-loathing person that doesn't feel that he's good enough, that he's worthy, because he sees himself as a coward. He lost everybody that he loved, you know, because he was clearly part of a very loving family.
A big family, wasn't it, when he left them?
Yeah, and he had to turn his back on his family, never to see them again, because of probably out of fear of not only what he was, but like because he was a vampire, maybe he was worried he was going to kill them. So he's like, that's it, you know, and that's why you're then like...
Kept away because he thought, well, I could turn at any point. I don't know what's going to happen.
He has no place in this world. He has nobody or nothing that he belongs to. And you go, no wonder he got so embroiled in drugs and alcohol and, you know, all of this.
Knocks out the past, doesn't it? It knocks out the past.
Yeah. So it really made him like even more of a sympathetic character than all the bits that we've seen of him previously.
Yeah, definitely.
So
it's good. As Birdman gets out.
Yeah.
I want to know who this angel is.
Me too. There's clearly got to be more going on here because we keep seeing him.
He's got to go back and save him at some point if he sort of solves his problem. You know,
why do they have him? Why do they have that angel in particular? Like, what is the deal with the angel? Why are they keeping him hostage or like keeping him a prisoner? Like, is he something or somebody important? Is it going to turn out that he's like Gabriel or Michael, or, you know, like a really important angel?
Really one of the important angels.
It just makes you want. I just feel like...
Has he rebelled against God? Like, yeah, you keep him here.
Yeah. Like, there's clearly got to be something more going on with this angel.
I seriously hope so.
So we will have to wait and see. But there we go. Yes. So that is
our
Roundup review of everything for this week, folks. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. And we've enjoyed this. It was, you know, it was a good chat. And if you have enjoyed this, then, you know, the usual things. Please click that thumbs up and leave us a like. Leave us comments down below on your thoughts and your opinions and your anything from this discussion, leave us questions that we can answer next week, that kind of thing. Subscribe to the channel to help grow this Geek-Dom and grow the numbers and give us a bigger reach so that we can get further out there and bring more people's attention to my channel and to this podcast and everything else. And also the description box for the links to my Twitter, so you can come and follow and chat to me on there. And also my donation mediums. Should you feel kind enough to drop a few pennies in there, then I'd be extremely grateful for that. And yeah, it would be very helpful in building upon things for the channel. And that will do. So thank you again for joining me this week, Mother.
Oh, it's always a pleasure.
I'm glad that we didn't allow ourselves to get carried away with too much in regards to the whole Ireland thing, because I was really ready to. I was chomping at the bit when I was watching it last night, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to end up getting myself in trouble by saying.
I did
things.
encourage you too much.
We start singing Irish rebel songs and things like that, and end up getting like taken off YouTube.
Taken off YouTube.
So yeah, so thank you very much, and we will.
As always.
We will be a little bit later next week, folks, because we're going to be recording next week on the Sunday, so the podcast won't be up until the Monday. But you know, it's only a day late, so hopefully that won't make much of a difference. Without further ado, you all take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye, 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 bye.